who have a vested interest in their future. Seeing you here tonight warms my heart, and I'm grateful that you are all here. My name is Pui Tran. I am SIREN's Executive Director. Before we begin, I do want to make sure we recognize some of our special guests who are here tonight. When I call your name, please stand and wave. First, let me recognize Mr. Mayor Santos Garcia. I also want to recognize Madera Council Member Elsa Mejia. Elsa is also our newest board member for SIREN. Now, at SIREN, our mission is to empower low-income immigrants and refugees. One of the ways that we do this is through civic engagement and encouraging and preparing our communities to vote. I'm sure everyone has heard many times already that it is very vital and very important for you to do so. In a year like this, with immigrants and refugees are a big part of the conversation, voting is vital for our communities. When we don't vote, we give our permission and our power to people who don't understand us, who may not care about us, and who only believe in one version of America. For this year, there is truly a unique opportunity here in Madera to shape the rest of what the rest of the nation can be. For better or for worse, our federal government is closely divided between two parties. In this race for who gets to speak for you in the House of Representatives, we have a candidate from each of those parties here tonight. The race itself is expected to be close, and you who are here may be the ones to decide who goes to Washington, D.C. This event was done in partnership with Latinx, represented here tonight by Ben Monterosa, and Roberto Gonzalez. We were also able to secure this site through the support from Monica Bravo. And also, thank you to Self-Made for hosting us this evening. Lastly, I also want to recognize Lynette Lumelli, Executive Director of the Madera Coalition for Community Justice, who will graciously serve tonight as our facilitator and has been at the forefront of many issues affecting Madera residents, including the recent closure of the county's only hospital. Without further ado, please welcome Lynette.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Like you said, my name is Lynette Lomelli. I am the Executive Director at the Madera Coalition for Community Justice. Really quickly before we begin, I just want to go over what our evening is going to look like before I introduce our candidates. So what we will do is each candidate will have 1 minute to provide their opening statements, and we will go in order of a pre-event draw. Once that does begin, we will have our 1 minute timer for both candidates to see, and our timekeeper is right here. There she is. Then we will move forward to the prepared questions, and just a little note, the questions that we will be asking this evening are heavily revolving around community input, community concerns and issues that do impact our community. Then we will move to 60 seconds to respond to each question, and then we will close with our closing statements, and we will go in reverse order from opening. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our candidates for the evening. Congressional District 13, Representative Mr. John Duarte. And our candidate for Congressional District 13 and current Assembly Member Adam Gray. As I did mention, there was a pre-event draw where Mr. Duarte will be starting us off with 1 minute to provide his opening statements. Mr. Duarte.
And go, right?
Go.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having us here, and I think all the groups that came together to put together this important forum. There's nothing better than getting out and meeting the folks in my congressional district, up and down the district, goes from Coalinga to Lathrop. When I ran, I knew this was a district where I could unite so many interests we all have together. If we get clean water on the farms, we can get clean surface water to treat for our cities here in the valley. Many of the communities here in the Central Valley don't have clean treated surface water, and we can improve that. I know that if we fight to get energy costs down, we will get your air conditioning bills down, we'll get your home electricity bills down, and we'll bring more businesses to create jobs here in the valley. Energy cost is a big deal. We've got to make sure that we have affordable energy costs for homes and businesses. And then we've got to build the right transportation. So we'll talk more about these things. Thank you all for having me here tonight. Very excited to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Gray.
Well, good evening, and thank you all for being here. Thank you to the organizers and all the volunteers and the board members who worked so hard to put this event on. It's important to have these community conversations about what is a very important election. My name is Adam Gray. I'm running for the 13th Congressional District, and I'm running because I think we deserve a Congress that actually works as hard as we do every day. And unfortunately right now, we have the most unproductive Congress in U.S. history. A Congress that is more interested in dividing us, making excuses, than getting anything done. I served in the state legislature representing Merced County and Stanislaus County for a decade. We did a bipartisan infrastructure act, a bipartisan water bond. We built a medical school program here in the valley. That's the kind of work we need our elected officials doing, actually improving our communities, not dividing us. And that's why I'm running for Congress, and I'm looking forward to the conversation this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Now we will begin with our first question, and just please be advised that this is surrounding the topic of immigration. Mr. Duarte, we are going to begin with you. Immigration has become the top issue during the election cycle, and there has been continued demonization of immigrants and refugees, despite the fact that our communities contribute nearly $750 billion to the California economy. What does immigration reform look like to you?
That's a very important topic, and I think today the Hispanic voter is more powerful than you've ever been. Not only because this is a swing district, but because Hispanic voters are coming out in numbers, and they're moving from party to party, really deciding who's got the answer. I think both parties need to come to the table, and that's why I dropped my immigration bill last week. I initiated an immigration bill that puts border security and verifiable elections with a DACA program, an amnesty program, a guest worker program, things that Democrats will say yes to. I've been on every one of the DACA, amnesty, and guest worker bills there's been in Washington since I've got there. And I held against my own party on HR 2 because they had a very strict E-Verify requirement in HR 2 that would have pushed so many of you families, so many of the families here in this community into the shadows. E-Verify was removed from HR 2, so I was able to support it when it went back to the floor. And now I think we need to make a deal. Both parties need to come together, border security and amnesty, and we need to do it now. And I'm going to be right in the middle of it, and I am right in the middle of it.
Thank you. You know, the first thing we have an obligation to do is show some moral leadership. Well, we have a major nominee of a party here in this great country saying things like immigrants poison the blood of America, insulting Puerto Ricans, making statements that are beneath the dignity of office. We can't support that kind of nonsense, and we actually have to stand up and oppose it. Unfortunately, our congressman has endorsed that candidate and has been unwilling to actually embrace the compromise he talks about. When the U.S. Senate came up with a compromise immigration proposal that was perfect by nobody's standards and frankly didn't do enough, but was progress, the minute former President Trump spoke out against it, all the Republicans, including John, went running. That's not the kind of leadership we need. We need serious people that are going to bring people together and deal with treating immigrants with respect. You know, immigrants have done so much to improve this country. We need to embrace and support it and solve this immigration problem going forward.
Yeah. Undocumented residents alone contribute $8.5 billion to the California economy, and many have lived in the Central Valley for decades. There are an estimated 2.7 million residents in California who are students, workers, business owners, neighbors, friends, and family. How would you approach working with our undocumented families?
Yes, that's you.
Excellent. Yeah, I voted against the half-baked border security bill because it was half-baked border security, and it did nothing for amnesty, it did nothing for DACA, it did nothing for guest worker program. It was simply half-baked border security. It didn't solve any of our problems here in the Valley. And so I'll do that again because we need to do real border security. We've got people paying off the cartels, making a fake amnesty claim, and getting a work visa. Well, we've got families, as you're describing, living in the shadows for decades and not being able to come to the shadows and be full partners in the American dream. So as in my bill, my immigration, border security and immigration reform bill, we want to bring these families out of the shadows. Families that have been working, families that are law-abiding. We want to bring these people out of the shadows. And then we want a guest worker program to make sure we meet the needs of agriculture. Because a lot of these families, as they come out of the shadows, we know they're going to move up, they're going to find other jobs. And agriculture in our communities here are going to need more workers every year. So let's bring them in, but let's know who we're bringing in. And let's make sure that they're people who really want to come here for the American dream.
We need to right away embrace those that are already here, that are working, contributing, and deserve to have the dignity of citizenship, and we need to have that pathway to citizenship for those that are here and our dreamers. We also need to embrace border security and reject the idea that Washington always wants to divide us and act as if we can't have a secure border and a compassionate and fair immigration system that allows people to come and make a better life. This is a valley of immigrants. Almost every family here, we've got one of the most diverse communities in the country. People from all over the world who have come here to work and make a better life. We've got to embrace that and be leaders. And again, we just cannot have people in office that continue to sow division, insult, and say these nasty things about immigrants working, acting as if everyone's a drug dealer or a criminal. We know that's not true. We work every day with these folks. These are our neighbors, our friends, and our family, and we need to move forward, get rid of the rhetoric and the negativity in Washington, D.C.
Thank you for that. Really quickly, I did want to ask a little bit more, if we can elaborate a little bit more on your stance regarding DACA.
Yes, if you were a minor child and came here with your parents by no choice of your own, most of us stick with our parents when they take us to another country. We're gonna give you a full green card, permanent residency, and you're gonna be able to engage and enjoy the American dream. We've got kids who came over here and no choice of their own at young ages, weren't born here, but maybe just barely weren't born here, and still they graduate our colleges and can't find the kinds of jobs that they really have the potential for because they're frozen out of our economy because of their immigration status, their lack of a social security number. This DACA fix is long overdue, and that's why I want to take a serious look at it. I want you to put things in my bill, including HR 2 level border security, real border security, safe and verifiable elections to make sure that if you want to register to vote, you need to show that you're an American citizen, and entice a deal that really solves several problems on each side of the aisle that are priorities for many Americans so that we can get this done.
Yeah.
This should be an easy issue. We've taken steps here in California to actually provide services, education, healthcare to folks with DACA status. The fact that Washington, these folks say they're for making a difference. There's been times this congressional year where there's been a one vote difference between the Democrats and the Republicans, which means in any of those moments, John could have joined with the Democrats and actually fixed the DACA problem, but he didn't, because that would require actually taking on his own party. And that's the problem we have in Washington, is people are getting pushed around by the party bosses. They tell you what you want to hear at campaign time or introduce a bill, and then they get back to Congress and do nothing. This is the most unproductive Congress we've ever had, the most divided. It's got to come to an end.
Thank you. Moving on to our next topic, related to economy. Americans have repeatedly faced budget brinkmanship or pushing our limits to the budget. Process has been hijacked to try to extract policy concessions that are not directly tied to the budget, and the threat of government shutdown seems to come back every year. This has occurred so often that Americans' credit rating was downgraded by Fitch last year, which specifically stated the erosion of governance. As part of its justification, how will you try to fix this as a member of Congress?
Well, I took every vote I could take to keep the government open. I know Santos, your mayor, came out to my office. He's not endorsing me, but he came. We always talk. He said, "You've got to keep the government open." I said, "Santos, I am committed to keeping the government open. I will vote to keep this government open." And I did every time there was a chance to keep the government open. Some folks want to see shutdowns for theater. Others think the other side will get blamed. I don't care. I know that in this district, when the ag appropriations bill came up, 81% of the ag appropriations bill is food stamps, SNAP. We don't want to shut that down. We want to keep that going. for the farms and for the families that need that nutrition support. We've got the highest food stamp benefit in America today. We've got the most nutritional challenges in America today, just making ends meet with food inflation. We need these programs. We're going to keep these programs open, and I'm committed to keeping the programs open. So others want the brinksmanship. We do have to balance our books. If America keeps printing money, we're going to have another type of downgrade on our bills. We're going to look less creditworthy than we should for other reasons.
Thank you.
I mean, this is exactly the problem. We've got a government that brings us no progress, no solutions. They've not threatened to shut the government down every year. It's been every few months. It's embarrassing what's going on in Washington, D.C. They have lowered the credit rating of the United States. And the reality is, John didn't say it in his answer, but it's only the folks in his party that are doing that brinksmanship. The Democrats have been the ones that have actually come to the table and kept the government open. And so whether he cast a vote to keep the government open or not, he empowered the leadership. He voted for the very leaders that are causing this problem. And we've got to send a message to Washington that we're not going to put up with it anymore.
Thank you. We have seen some of the worst rates of inflation, as most of us in here know, in the past few years, but it has finally cooled off to an expected rate of 2.4%. However, the price of goods still remains expensive for many of our working families. What would you credit the cooling of inflation to, and what else can be done to provide relief to Central Valley residents?
We have a huge cost gap. Prices have gone way up over the last 3 or 4 years. Groceries, gas are high. We're taxing them too much. We're putting too many burdens on the consumer. We're not delivering affordable energy. And you know, we used to say this is a carbon economy. We need the affordable, expandable energy to meet our consumer needs. Plastics, fertilizers, healthcare, the energy that creates food and keeps it cold for us is all based on energy. So prices have gone up. Wages have not gone up because we're not a great place to create jobs anymore. When America has expensive energy, when we're highly regulated, when we're here in the Central Valley where we need these resource jobs, agriculture, forestry, on-the-ground manufacturing, and they keep leading to other states because California is a horrible place to operate a business like that, we're not going to see the wages increase to give you all access to the American dream, let you put a few pennies ahead and get ahead of your costs every week. We can run this economy better if we look more at our natural resources and have better policies.
Thank you.
Well, I think you asked who would we credit the cooling of inflation to, or what policies. And the reality is we've had good fiscal policies these last few months and years that have put inflation in the right direction. But what causes inflation? Overspending. The Trump administration and the Biden administration both spent an incredible amount of money to deal with COVID. Trump mismanaged it. Biden tried to clean it up. But what resulted in was an incredible deficit. And we don't have people in Washington who are willing to work together in a meaningful way, Democrats and Republicans, to actually have some fiscal discipline, work towards a balanced budget like we had under Clinton, and get these costs down and keep inflation low.
Thank you. Our next question. Our presidential candidates have taken different positions on the use of tariffs. Former President Trump believes that they can be used to protect American manufacturing jobs, while Vice President Harris argues that tariffs are a tax on consumers because they will raise the price of goods. Congress has the power to levy or remove tariffs, and has such role in this decision as well. Where do you stand on tariffs?
Well, tariffs should be messed with very carefully. What we did under President Trump, was we started a trade war where we should have started a gradual repositioning of America on trade through small movements. Also, if America is going to be competitive and create real opportunities for you, we've got to be a great place to run a business and produce things. And if we're gonna challenge our world trade partners and repatriate manufacturing, we've got to have affordable energy. We've got to have a workforce that's ready to enter the economy and move around the economy and have the freedom to do that. And then we can stand up to our trading partners and say, hey, we need fair trade relationships with you. We can't keep mortgaging American jobs to try and make friends around the world that don't give us fair access to their markets. And we've got to play smarter with tariffs, not make as big a moves, make small moves, but we've got to be more engaged in world trade, and we've got to stick up and defend the American worker. And that means making America a great place to operate and making sure we have true parity across the oceans.
Thank you.
I oppose tariffs, and I oppose the tariffs that Trump's talked about this whole campaign. It's bad for agriculture, it's bad for the San Joaquin Valley and our community. We don't need things that are gonna drive costs up, and I think this ought to be a point that John and I could agree on.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't.
Okay. I do want to make a note that we are going to be switching the order of responses now. I should have been doing that in the beginning, but I got a little excited. So we will be switching the order this go around. So moving forward to housing and homelessness. As we know, it is something that really impacts our community here in Madera, our county in Madera. So we'd like to gain some perspective on where you guys do stand. California arguably has the largest housing deficit in the nation. In 2022, The Hill reported that the housing deficit in our state is almost 1 million homes. In places like Bakersfield, Visalia, Fresno, and Merced, rents have increased 35 to 39%. If elected to Congress, how can you help California and the Central Valley promote housing development and stabilize rents for our residents?
Well, this is a question that takes a lot longer than a minute to answer, but we need to invest in infrastructure. We've got to have the federal government come in and actually be willing to build the infrastructure to give us a boom in building. We only build about 125,000 new doors each and every year in California, and we're 4 million homes undersupplied. But in order to build those homes, what do we need? Well, we need workers, which is why we need serious people in Congress dealing with immigration reform, allowing people who want to come here and work and participate in our economy to do so, because that could be a major benefit to actually solving this housing issue. We need the folks that are going to be carpenters, plumbers, electricians, and actually do the work to create the housing that we so desperately need here in the San Joaquin Valley and throughout California.
If you buy a house in California, it's got to have solar panels. This house is right back here, 1,300 square foot home, solar panels, $20,000. It's got to have fire sprinklers, $15,000. It's got to pay an airport fee, $25,000. And then it's got to have water. We've got to get the water situation in California fixed. You can't build homes if you don't have water. We've got to fix the water for the farms and the homes and the jobs. We're not doing any of these things. Then when we build infrastructure, we're not building the expressways and the freeways and the off-ramps on the freeways. What we're doing is building a high-speed rail project that's going to cost $100 billion. There are 20 highway interchanges, $50 million interchanges. There are 20 water treatment plants, $50 million each. There are 20 sewer plants, $50 million each. All of those costs can be taken out of the permit fees to build homes if we start building the infrastructure we need and don't build the silly infrastructure that's not really going to serve our needs at all.
Thank you. California has the 5th highest rate of homelessness, but in terms of sheer numbers, California is number 1. There is no doubt that we have an unhoused crisis. What can you do as a member of Congress, a member of Congress to help our state and region address this crisis?
Look, we don't have enough mental health resources. We don't have enough housing. We've had a problem. I'm currently supporting Prop 36 along with district attorneys to try and get some change in our laws that actually don't allow the perpetual problem we've seen since the passage of Prop 47, which is people on the street who aren't able to go through the system and end up in drug court and actually be forced into the very treatment they need to get help. People that are suffering from mental health addiction, drug addiction, and other problems really need serious help. And we've got to deal with the housing issue because that just makes it even more difficult. When we don't have the houses for folks that are working hard and don't have those problems, the other folks are falling through the cracks. And so we need people serious about solving these problems. And that's why we can't afford to have 2 more years in the most unproductive Congress in U.S. history.
So we spilled huge numbers of criminals out of jails and put them on our streets when we passed Prop 47. I did not support Prop 47. You may venture to find out some folks who did. I support Prop 36, which undoes great portions of Prop 37 and puts criminals back, hopefully puts drug addicts back into treatment with the threat of jail. That ended when we passed Prop 47. We can reverse that. And then we need to get the economy going, and we need to put families back together. We know the ills we caused during COVID. We know we shut down businesses. We know we killed jobs. We know what wine sales did. We know what cannabis sales did. COVID was a tragedy, not only because there was a virus running around, but because we caused, through our government here in California, all kinds of social ills overreacting to COVID. You need a government that respects your ability to make decisions for yourself and doesn't mandate crashing the economy and closing schools.
Thank you. Moving forward to a very important topic that hits home here in our county, healthcare. As you both may know, I'm sure you know actually, Madera County lost its only hospital last year, leaving our 160,000 residents without an accessible hospital. If elected, what can you do to bring federal resources here to support the healthcare needs of our residents? So we're going to start with Mr. Graham.
Well, during my time in the state legislature, I put together the funding to actually build a medical school program here in the valley to expand our healthcare resources, to have our community clinics open additional hours. During John's first 2 years in Congress, we lost a hospital serving this entire county. And frankly, that hospital, thankfully, is going to be reopened because of the work of our state legislative officials. Because the federal government was nowhere to be seen and actually helping with that. And so we need people that are serious about more healthcare resources, not cuts, cuts, cuts. You know, John and some of his Republican colleagues have actually supported making drastic cuts to our federal spending that would reduce healthcare options here, that would make it more difficult to keep our hospitals open. This is not the solution. It's excuses and misdirection instead of making the key investments that our communities really need, and healthcare is at the top of the list.
Madera Community Hospital was a huge loss. Madera Community Hospital served about 80% Medicare and about 80% Medicare, Medicaid, had very, very low fully insured folks there. And when it went bankrupt, literally the day before I became a US congressman, I was meeting with the folks there before I even got sworn in. Aventis, Trinity Healthcare, was set up to invest in that. St. Francis and Fresno was going to affiliate, and it was going to become part of the Trinity Healthcare Catholic hospital chain. Our Attorney General in Sacramento, a state elected politician, Rob Bonta, put so many requirements on Trinity Healthcare that the deal fell apart, and it was now took 2 years for it to get put into the hands of a private healthcare company that isn't a non-for-profit. They're not affiliated with a national Catholic hospital system, and I hope that it still serves the needs of this community, but I think we took a step backward because of government interference.
Thank you, Mr. Duarte. Moving forward into our conflict in the Middle East, what role do you believe the U.S. should play in the escalating conflicts in the Middle East? And we will begin with Mr. Duarte.
Yeah, there's tragedy in the Middle East. If we look at what's happening in Gaza right now, if we look at the innocent Palestinian families, some innocent Jewish families, but the scale of the tragedy in these terrorist-occupied communities next to Israel is horrible. But Israel is an ally of America's. They are defending themselves and they are ridding their neighbors of terrorism. Terrorists who not only want to kill them, who've proven they will take the chance to kill them by the hundreds and thousands, kidnap them, imprison them, and hold them hostage. We have luckily been able to stand by Israel with the use of foreign aid that hasn't included American soldiers on the ground. Same thing we're doing in Ukraine, and we're preparing Taiwan to avoid being invaded by China. America cannot be an island of freedom. If the American dream is to stay alive, we've got to make sure our allies around the world and our enemies around the world know that America is strong and we stand with our allies, especially when they're on the tip of the spear doing the fighting themselves.
You know, this issue really illustrates why we can't have divisive and erratic leadership in Washington, D.C. America's word has to mean something in the international order, and when we give a commitment to our allies in Israel, to our allies in NATO and Ukraine, we need to actually keep our word. And part of the problem is that this divisive rhetoric that we've seen from our former president, as if every time we switch presidents, administration, or different parties in charge, you can't no longer count on the United States to actually keep its word to what commitments we have made. And we have to restore that. We have to all be Americans first when it comes to international affairs, and not pretend as if there's a Democratic and a Republican position to these issues. It's just indicative of what's really broken in Washington, D.C., and it's why we just need wholesale change back there and new leaders that can have honest leadership and actually keep their word.
Thank you. Continuing forward with the escalating conflicts, there's no denying that there have been many casualties on both sides, we'll say. Do you believe that the U.S. should pursue a ceasefire in Gaza, and what is an appropriate course of action for the U.S. to take, if so? We'll start with Mr. Gray.
I mean, of course, we should seek a ceasefire, but a ceasefire requires two sides, and it requires diplomacy, and I think the United States has tried to use its diplomatic powers to bring these sides together. It's been a horrific conflict and many innocent lives lost. Again, while we have to be able to have our word mean something in the international world, we cannot have people thinking that depending on who wins the presidential race or which party's in control, that we're going to abandon allies or change our foreign policy. It just leads to really dangerous environments, and innocent lives are being lost because of it.
We should always pursue peace. We should always pursue cooperation and negotiations. That's absolutely true under any administration. We did better prior to the current administration. Russia invaded Crimea, part of Ukraine, during Obama's administration. Russia didn't invade any part of Ukraine during Trump. Russia invaded Ukraine during Joe Biden's administration. During the previous administration, when Donald Trump was in charge, we had the Abraham Accords, we had Jordan, we had United Emirates, we had countries all through the Middle East making peace, formal, durable peace agreements with Israel. The same countries that shot down Iranian missiles a few months ago. We had great gains under the previous administration. When America shows strength and shows a strong willingness to stand with its allies, our allies and the rest of the world become a more peaceful place.
Thank you. Mr. Gray, we're going to start with you with this next question. What role do you believe the U.S. should play in Ukraine?
I think we should stand by Ukraine. We cannot have authoritarian regimes like that in Russia with Putin invading other countries and disrupting the world order. And we've got long-standing, decades-old commitments to these countries that we can't waver on. And again, when we've got erratic leadership, particularly at the top of the ticket, people who will say anything to get elected, it endangers our relationships, it endangers these countries, and endangers the world order.
The examples we show in the world today and the results we get in the world today, whether it's in China and Taiwan, or it's in Ukraine and Russia, or it's Iran next to Israel, those are going to have implications. There will be a day when Mexico has foreign interests challenging Mexico, and Mexico looks to America as an ally. And our credibility, and our ability to bring peace to the world through strength is going to matter a lot, closer and closer to home. And so I believe we've got to stay the course. I signed on to the money, sending money to Ukraine, to Taiwan, and to Israel. And I'll stand by. We brought South Korea into Congress to speak to us. We brought Japan in, other key allies. We're forming tighter agreements with Australia. America needs to show itself to be a truly strong friend. And I think we're doing that. And I think we can do it a lot better than what we're doing today.
Thank you. As we know, abortion rights took the stage front and center when Roe v. Wade was overturned. This has now led to inconsistent rules across the nation. California has enshrined the right to choose in its constitution and has become a haven for those from other states who have stripped women of control over their bodies in this regard. Should Roe v. Wade be codified in Congress? Why or why not? We'll start with Mr. Duarte.
Well, I think California has codified law that I believe is far beyond Roe v. Wade. If you actually want to look at Roe v. Wade specifically, what we've codified here in Congress is it has abortion protections beyond that. And I think it's durable, and it's in this state. Now in Congress, we had the Clyde Amendment, which would have stopped military women stationed in a non-abortion state from going and getting their health services in a state that allowed abortion. I voted against. I was one of two Republicans to vote against the Clyde Amendment to make sure women could access those health care rights, even if they're in the military and stationed in a state, not by choice of their own, stationed in a state that didn't allow for those rights. So I'm pro-choice. I think California has made its choice as to what abortion policy is going to be, and I'll stand by California's right to do that. I think everyone here is well protected in their access to those health services.
listen to what John just said. He's unwilling to codify Roe v. Wade and make sure that every woman is protected no matter what state she lives in, no matter where she's traveling. This issue was settled across this country for decades, and what the Supreme Court done is disrupted that. Congress should absolutely codify Roe v. Wade and put an end to the madness. And for John to sit up here and say, I'm pro-choice, but I won't support policies that ensure every woman in the country is safe, is frankly insulting and should be absurd to all of us. There are people that have deep religious convictions and oppose, these policies that are pro-life. That's fine, we can have those debates, but to mislead voters is truly insulting.
Thank you. We just experienced a massive heat wave that blanketed our state in early October. At the same time, Hurricanes Helen and Milton devastated the American Southeast. California has been a leader in fighting climate change, but we are seeing regression across the nation, including a major candidate calling climate change weird science. Do you believe that climate change is real? And what is your commitment as it relates to addressing climate change if you are elected to Congress, Mr. Duarte?
So I've read a lot on this. I can be a science geek, and I believe that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has kicked up temperatures on Earth a little bit, and I believe we've kind of saturated that feedback system, and more carbon is not going to lead to significantly higher temperatures. But if we want to combat climate change here in California, we should do it in a way that doesn't put the cost of that on the backs of working families here in the Central Valley. Right now, PG&E electric bills are 47 cents a kilowatt hour. Families are air conditioning, ventilating their homes with the door shut. We can combat climate change by moving to more American natural gas, which has 1/3 the carbon output per energy unit and is less than half the cost of oil. And we can ramp up solar energy, both old school solar energy plants, turn them up, they're there, and new generation solar energy that would be scalable to meet our needs, and it wouldn't destroy jobs and make your electric bill unaffordable. So we haven't done it right. We can do a lot better, and we need to rethink our approach.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to help John with this one. The answer to the question is, I do believe climate change is real. And I would oppose any presidential candidate who would say something ridiculous like it's weird science. John won't. He talks about being independent and willing to stand up to his party. This is a perfect time to do so. Just come out and say Donald Trump's wrong on this, and I recognize that it's real and it's a great threat to agriculture and people that live here in the San Joaquin Valley. And of course we should take every effort to keep things affordable for folks as we deal with this very real and serious threat. But we need serious people who can at least acknowledge the truth that's right in front of our face.
Thank you. AI has the potential to revolutionize everything from manufacturing to public transit to education to how we live our daily lives. This potential also comes with a risk that AI can upend and disrupt our society, as well as it can gather and process massive amounts of data and create spoofs that can lead us to doubt what we see with our own eyes or hear with our own ears. What can and what should Congress do to balance the potential revolutionary gains of AI against its terrifying risks? Mr. Gray, we'll begin with you.
Look, I think we need to be serious about it. I don't think we need to set out public panic. AI exists today. When we pick up our phones, when we use things like Siri and map programs and all kinds of daily interactions we have with AI. But we do need to take a serious look and make sure that this technology is under control. But we need to do so with folks from the tech community at the table being part of that conversation so that we don't stifle innovation. Obviously, we've all seen the benefit of technology here in California, the many jobs and opportunities have been created. But it is a serious thing to be looked at. We need to regulate it in the appropriate way so that it's not a danger to our national security or our citizens.
Yeah, AI is a technological frontier, and it's going to create a lot of productivity gains. It's going to improve jobs. It's going to improve our lives, and it probably already is. It is an energy hog. The AI server farms that we are going to need to power the economy with AI information systems all across America need affordable, scalable energy. And if we don't provide that affordable, scalable energy here in California, we're going to have a big problem leading the world in AI. And so Can we regulate it? Someone's gonna have to tell me exactly how we regulate something that can go through a fiber optic cable or through Starlink and be in Russia or China or Iran or North Korea within a few minutes, and keep it under wraps here in America in some way. So I don't have a lot of confidence that we can regulate it. I think there's privacy issues, but the reality is we're gonna need to move forward and think more about how to lead in AI than how to hamstring AI.
Thank you. The Supreme Court upended decades of precedent when it overturned Chevron doctrine, which allowed agencies that develop expertise and specialized knowledge over issues such as climate change, workers' rights, and health and safety standards to pass regulations without warning for Congress. The expectation is now that Congress must be able to legislate on these matters regardless of knowledge base or subject matter expertise of its members. How will you tackle your legislative responsibilities now that the power of federal agencies is greatly limited, Mr. Duarte?
I will look at Chevron deference and the recent ruling as an opportunity to get water in our faucets and water on our farms. Too many federal agencies have had too much power for too long that wasn't granted them constitutionally through Congress. Congress makes the laws and Congress brings in the lobbyists. We have hearings, we have experts, we have the scientists. Justices or judges on federal courts do not have any more ability to know what's right and wrong scientifically when the agencies tell them. The agencies have their own agendas. Congress makes the law, Congress sets the regulation, and Congress is answerable to you when agencies reach too far, make things cost too much, and put our natural resources aside because some agency has an agenda and wants to exercise power that was never granted them by Congress. So I was looking forward to the Chevron deference case coming down as it did, and I expect to improve lives here in the Central Valley by exercising the limits of Chevron deference.
Thank you. Mr. Gray?
I think Americans are increasingly losing faith in the Supreme Court because of decisions that folks are viewing through the lens of partisanship. And while the Chevron doctrine, could create some pretty incredible problems as to how we regulate industry as it is today, I do think it also exposes the fact that Congress, which has an oversight function, to actually look at the laws that are on the books and improve them and make sure that we're governing in the appropriate way, has really, been absent in that responsibility. They've spent more time using their oversight capabilities to conduct political witch hunts and strange investigations than actually looking at the things that impact everyday American lives in how we govern. So it really exposes that problem, and that again is a reason we need less partisan leadership in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. And as we begin to reach the closing of our program, we are going to shift to our last two questions. I will begin to transition to Mr. Gray first for the first question, and then the last one we will begin with Mr. Duarte. January 6, 2021 showed how fragile our democracy can be. If you are elected and are in a position to certify the results of our presidential election, will you vote to certify the results, Mr. Gray?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you. And our last question. These candidates have been really flying through these questions, I will say. I just want to put that out there. I appreciate it. We weren't anticipating going through all of the questions, but we actually have this evening. So I appreciate you guys really sticking to that time. And I'm going to go ahead and continue on with our last question before we move on to our closing remarks. In an environment where brutal personal attacks are becoming the norm, and we are very divided as a nation, we believe that this is an appropriate closing question for each of you before you provide your closing remarks. Say one nice thing about your opponent, and we're going to start with you, Mr. Duarte.
Well, I've run against Adam a few times now. We've debated a few times, and we're always able to shake hands. Last time I was running, I said, there were 5 of us in the primary. And if we'd had a poker game, I think everybody on the Democrat side I would have invited back to the poker game the next time. There's probably one of my guys on the Republican side I wouldn't have invited back. I just thought he was painful. I won't use any names. But we have fun. We shake hands. I think Adam's a great partner in this public policy, and he's put himself forward over the years. And I'm looking forward to seeing him again in 2 nights. And so we keep it congenial. Even though we have differences, we both want to wear the purple satin trunks. We keep it congenial.
You know, I'm going to agree. John is an extraordinarily friendly and nice person who I enjoy campaigning with on the campaign trail. We have very different ideas. We have a different set of values, and we have a strong disagreement over what's going on in Washington, D.C. I think we need people who are willing to take bold action back there on the party issues, and John's part of the status quo that we've seen. But he is a friendly and nice person. We've had a good campaign, and we've had amicable debates here, and we'll see you on Friday night, and always have a smile on our faces.
Thank you. That was very nice. Lots of friendship up here. As we move for our closing remarks, I do want to remind our attendees that we are going to go in reverse order. So, Mr. Gray, we are going to begin with you, and you have 1 minute to provide your closing remarks.
Well, thank you all for putting together this wonderful event. It's the best part of being out on the campaign trail is visiting with the folks that one of us is going to get the honor to represent. I'm proud of my record representing our community here in the San Joaquin Valley when I was in the state legislature. I did it differently than most elected officials. I started the California Problem Solvers Caucus. I was the head of the Moderate Caucus. I put together bipartisan deals on infrastructure, on water, on healthcare. I'm slowing down. And it was a wonderful experience, and it proves that government can do good things when we work together. I want to encourage everyone to remember to vote on November 5th. It's important, no matter who you're going to vote for, to participate. This is an incredibly important conversation, and I appreciate all the wonderful people that put this great event together this evening.
Well, it's been an absolute honor representing the 13th Congressional District. This is a Hispanic Voting Rights Act district. So we knew coming into this, I would have to, have the honor to be your advocate for immigration reform, your advocate for fairness. And I'd be able to come down to 19 incorporated cities, meet with 19 mayors, say, hey, I'm your new congressman. I want you to think of me as a waiter. I want you to tell me as the elected mayor what you need from Washington, D.C. It was $3.5 million in sidewalks and road improvements for Park Lawn. It was sewer pipes and drainage pipes for Madera. It is $26 million the first year, $60 million the next year in community projects. We're trying to get dredging done. We're trying to get the dams operated better so we have more water. And the long-term view for me is I want treated surface water in every hamlet and town in the Central Valley to get you off the groundwater and get you healthy, treated surface water in your faucets. That's my number one goal.
Thank you. And really quickly, before I pass the mic over to our Norberto Gonzalez, who will be closing this program, I do want to thank SIREN and Poder Latinx for not only the invitation to moderate, but to certainly be here and further contribute my civic responsibility. I definitely echo what both candidates say. It is super important that we go out and vote. Your vote matters, especially for those you vote for those that cannot. And I encourage everybody to go home and really encourage your kids and your neighbors to go out and vote, because your vote absolutely does matter. So without further ado, I would like to reintroduce Norberto Gonzalez, who will be closing out our program for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to give a hand of applause to the candidates. Thank you for showing up for our community. I especially want to thank all of you for being here tonight. Round of applause for yourself. I want to recognize Pro Tem Mayor Cici Gallegos for being here today. Sorry, and I want to end by giving a little bit of my story. So I am the state director for Poder Latinx, and my organization helped SIREN put this event together. We are dedicated to building a block of Latino, civically engaged individuals in the Central Valley and across the states that we do work in. It is our turn to make sure that we are represented in Congress and in every seat that we used to only be the food item at. So I'm asking every single one of you on today, that is Vote Early Day, one of our national holidays for Poder Latinx, to make sure that you take that ballot that you got at home, that you take it out of that envelope, that you fill it out, that you put it back in that envelope, and that you sign it, and you put it back in that mailbox. It's that simple. Every single one of your votes matters. It's not going to stop anything in the world. It's 2 minutes at most. If you do your homework, maybe it takes you a little longer. But there's always a lot of places where you can go and find some support, right? So I am so grateful to be here with all of you. I want to end also by saying that if you forgot to register for this election, in California we have something that's provisional. So if you need to go register, you still can do that at your county office. Again, thank you for being out here tonight. Make sure you vote, and see you all on the other side, November 5th.